Driving Culture 4, this is Hypebeast Radio. We're sitting here with Angelo, Baque. I'm your co-host, Madrell. And
Ben Rosen.
Cool. And how's it going, Angelo?
Going well. It's nice early in the morning, which I like. I feel awake, no pun intended.
Awesome. And for all the listeners, could you just let them know like where we are currently?
We are at 99 Canal Street, Chinatown, New York. We are at Ground Zero for Baque Creative. We're in my little space.
Yeah. How is it to open up this space?
It's been amazing. It's been quite interesting and liberating to finally have something that's mine. It's the first time ever, ever since I was a kid. Since I was 13, I've always had a boss. I've always worked for someone. So, at the age of 38 to finally venture off and start my own thing, it's scary as shit. But at the same time, it's quite liberating. Yeah, it's been an interesting experience.
Awesome, good to hear. So, as discussed, with the podcast, we like to have it be educational. That's the direction of the podcast, and we get the backstories of just influential creatives within our space. So, with that being said, we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning. How did you first get your entry into fashion?
How did I first get my entry into fashion? I mean, I'm a native New Yorker, and part of growing up here is you want to look good. This is a city where there's a lot of interaction. The minute you walk out your doorstep, you're being judged. Whether you like it or not. And so for me, that first layer before you can even get to know me, you could look at my clothes. And growing up in the time period that I was very fortunate to grow up in the 80s and 90s where my idols, I wanted to look like my idols. My idols were Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, Slick Rick, and for me they look cool. To me they always look fucking cool. And then in the 90s, Grand Poobah was a big inspiration for me, and then I got introduced to the world of polo, and you finally, I don't know, it was weird, man. It's not weird, but having a cool jacket or a hat can go a long way with women, when I was a teenager. So once that started kicking in, I wanted that female attention. There was there was more pressure to look good and to kind of get my shit together, Yeah.
Yeah, what were you wearing at the time?
I was wearing the Gap. Gap was really fucking cool back then. We're talking 1992, 3, 4, those are my high school years, 92 to 96. So, it was a big deal to own a pair of Jabot jeans. I remember I got my first pair of Brand X Jabot jeans, and that was major, my first Hilfiger piece, my first polo piece, and then mixed with random band tees. If you could get your hands on a Cypress Hill tee, that was a big fucking deal. Or, I started going to open mic events and hip hop shows, and to get the actual merch, was a big deal. I grew up in Queens, nobody was wearing a Boogie Monsters tee or Souls of Mischief. Anything from the West Coast was really cool if you could get your hands on hip hop wise.
You mentioned polo. Were you a part of the whole Low Life scene? Was that something?
No, I wasn't. I was not part. Low Lives. Here's the thing. Low Lives started out in Brownsville. Shouts to the OG Low Lives out there, and then it transitioned to the RFC crew around 1992. And I was just a little bit too young, you know what I mean? Those dudes were probably 4 years older than me, and running around in the Village and downtown. By the time I started really, really hanging out on Broadway, a lot of those dudes had transitioned into just worse things, you know what I mean? Whether it's stealing cars or drugs or whatever it is, you know what I mean? There's always kind of this next level of
whatever they could get off the truck.
Yeah, of criminality, you know what I mean? So by the time I came around, I was I was writing really bad poetry, like in 1996. You know, like I read like the autobiography of Che Guevara, and you know, I started getting more kind of like self-enlightened. Like I went to community college, and you know, I just started running with a completely different crew than what my crew looked like in high school.
Yeah, and as a college student, were you like doing any like jobs and stuff in your downtime?
Yeah, I mean, I got involved. I started going to the New Eurekan Poets Cafe like around 94, 95 through my boy Bazaar. Like he put me on to the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, and like that's where I saw like Erykah Badu for the first time, Mos Def, and Talib Kweli, and like all these Punchline and Wordsworth, like all these dudes, you know. And I wanted to be somehow involved in this kind of like movement, and so I started taking pictures. So between like writing like really bad poetry, I would take like pretty shitty photos too. And then I started pursuing photography like from 96 to, I would say like 96 to 98, I really started kind of like, all right, like this is it, this is what I wanted to do. Prior to that, I thought I was gonna be a social studies teacher. And then I realized that all the history that we were learning was all a lie. So then I felt hypocritical to want to go teach history that was bullshit.
That was the Che Guevara talking.
Yeah, it was the Che Guevara, absolutely. That was a pretty like shifting moment in my life that, you know, I would say like kind of like was pretty important. That kind of got me off the block, like got me off that block mentality into more like city mentality. I can't even say it was global. Like I just knew like from a very early age that I just didn't want to be a kid from Queens, you know, like as much as I love being from Queens, like I wanted to be downtown. I wanted to be at the parties. I wanted to be at, you know, the hip hop shows, at the art openings. Like, I was lucky that I had an older sister that was obligated to take me everywhere. Yeah. You know, like I come from like a traditional super immigrant Ecuadorian family, so my sister fucking hated me because she had to take me wherever she went. So like, when I was 10 years old, I was able to hang out on Broadway with her. So this is like 1988, you know what I mean? Like shit was like really popping off. Like doesn't like Broadway now is like abandoned, you know what I mean? Right. But like Broadway like back in the late 80s and early 90s was just like had the coolest fucking stores. There was this place called Unique Boutique where like you walked in and someone like airbrushed your jean jacket, and then they had like a glow in the dark room, and like all the fucking weirdos worked there. And you know, I got my first job downtown when I was 18 at this store called Canal Jean Company, and it was the same thing. Like in the basement was like all the vintage stuff, and it was huge. You know where the Bloomingdale store is now?
Yeah.
That was Canal Jean Company.
Oh wow.
So it was 4 floors. So in the basement was the vintage where all the art students worked, and the floor that you would walk in was like there was a huge cash wrap, and they would get like all the hot girls from Avenue D to work there because it would bring all the guys in. And then like Levi's was on the top floor, and they had like all the good looking people up there. It was cool, man. It was like this weird caste system of retail. And I worked in the men's department, you know. So that was like my real kind of like entrance into like retail and learning what it is to merchandise and buy and all that stuff.
And so how did you make the transition from like Broadway to like the streetwear scene? Was that like a smooth transition? I got this job through my boy Vaz, who used to manage Bobito's Footwork, which was a small like boutique that was like they were the first ones to like carry sneakers and all that stuff. Yeah,
like
pre-flight club.
And all, like they had like a small Nike account. And Union already had existed, but Union didn't really have the sneaker element. Like Bobito really focused on the records and the kicks, you know, which was kind of new. And they were also heavily involved in that like open mic scene, you know what I mean? Like right. That was kind of like hand in glove. And like, so streetwear, there was no word that didn't exist. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like independent clothing, you know what I mean? So it was just like basically what your man's was printing in his backyard, you know what I mean? Or like in his garage or basement, he would bring it into the city and try to sell it to Union or Bobito. Those were kind of like the platforms. So my transition, my boy Vaz got me this job with this dude, Trevor, who was doing this t-shirt line called Double Down. And he took me to Magic in like 98, 99. And that's where I met Jeff Staple, I met Scott Sasso, I met Wayne COD. Like these dudes were like literally
OGs.
They were carrying their own shit to Magic, setting up their own booths with their family members. Like it was pretty fucking cool. And I was 19, you know what I mean? So like that was my first kind of like,
you know, understanding. And at the same time, my boy Chris Gibbs, who now owns Union LA, was just a shop guy at the Union New York store. And I met him at the New York back in like '95. So like he would like hook me up with a discount on t-shirts here and there, like, cause that shit was expensive for us. You know what I mean? Like a $28 t-shirt, a $32 t-shirt. Like
you're 19 years old.
That shit is like a $300 t-shirt today. You know what I mean? So like to get like 20% off on a t-shirt was like a big fucking deal. Or he'll just like something that didn't sell, be like, yo, here, you can rock that. I'm like, oh man, good looking out. So yeah, like through that was kind of like my inception into this world. And I worked at the Fader as a photo assistant in '99 under Jeff Staple. He kind of brought me in because then I was really pursuing the photography thing. And I worked under him and Eddie Brannon, and that was kind of like the best like free education that I got, you know, because I was trying to transition from community college to SVA, which was really fucking difficult for me.
Right.
And it's not easy, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't, like that's fucking hard. Like to get out of community college is fucking hard. That's just a trap. And he was like, yeah, he was really nice. He took me under his wing and he taught me, you know, how to lay out, you know, how to lay out magazine, like how to balance typography and images. And then this dude, Eddie Brannon, taught me how to like properly, you know, review somebody's work, you know, like how to open up, because back then, like you would hold a portfolio in hand, you know, now like people show with their fucking iPads, you know what I mean? But back in the day, like you would drop off your portfolio to a magazine and hope that they looked at it, you know? Yeah. Then after that, and I was working like really shitty like retail jobs in between, like Club Monaco, Urban Outfitters, you know, like I was just hustling, you know, I was like trying to work Friday through Sunday to have enough money to like to take my girlfriend out for like Red Lobster or some shit like that, you know what I mean? Like something really like, I thought that was really nice back then. Or like BBQs on A Street, which was like kind of popping back then.
Still an establishment.
You're still an establishment. And I was struggling, man. I was really fucking struggling. And then I needed a job, and I was like, Jeff, I need a fucking job, because they weren't paying me at the Fader. And I was like, fuck that place. I didn't want to work there anymore. And he was like, well, let me introduce you to this dude, James. He has a store called Stussy. And I was like, yeah, I know about it. Well, they're moving from Prince Street to Worcester, and they need kids to work in the store. So, you know, I'll set you up with an interview. And I was like, cool. So like I went to go meet James. He looked at me up and down, and he was like, And I was like, all right. And he was like, so you work for Double Down? Yeah, they're okay. And I'm like, all right, cool. And he goes, I'll call you. And then like a day later, he's like, hey, I need you in front of the store at 9 a.m. And I was like, cool. And that was the real kind of introduction, because I didn't really know shit. You know, I didn't know about COJPs. I didn't know about Neighborhood or Bape or, you know, Double Taps. I didn't know, and none of that stuff registered. Do you know what I mean? Like up until that point, like what I was really focused into was kind of like New York City based clothing, or like, you know, just like more like either it's New York or LA, not like what's cool in London or what's cool in Tokyo.
Yeah,
you know,
the entire Harajuku, like
like, and that shit was popping back then. You know, like what's on now? This is the year 2000, 2001. Like this shit is like cracking. Like you had like, you know, the uncle movement, you know what I'm saying? So like we have all these British dudes come in like with Bape sneakers and fucking Avisu jeans and, you know, like the Bape camo jacket, and it's just like, fuck, like that shit is dope, you know, like, or they would have like, you know, like a Stussy hoodie or like a Supreme, you know, something, you know what I mean? Like, it was weird. It was interesting and weird going into that world, you know, it was quite humbling because, you know, like I didn't, you know, like my attitude was like, I'm from New York, I know it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't tell me nothing, you know? Like,
I'm from Queens.
I'm from Queens, you know what I'm saying? So like, so to go there and kind of like get this understanding, like my boss at the time was Chris Keefe, and he's like one of the OG Supreme team dudes. And he introduced me to like Max Fish and like all the other dudes, you know, like it was weird because they weren't having it. Like when I first started coming around, like who the fuck is this kid? Like I had hair down to my shoulders. I was wearing like a Che Guevara tee.
I was gonna say,
like, you know, they're like this fucking hippie, you know what I mean? Like, and all these dudes already been hanging out for like 15 years. You know, like they've been skating the banks and hanging out downtown, and you know, so it was interesting, kind of like coming around and like being, you know, little by little being taken under a new wing, you know, like skate wing, because I also didn't know shit about skateboarding, you know. Up until that point, I still don't know much about skateboarding, but like I really didn't know anything about skateboarding in the year 2000, 2001, so that was pretty cool.
And while working at Stussy, you also met Will Whitney, who helped you like get into Nom de Guerre.
Yeah, so Will, after Chris left to go manage Supreme, Will came in,
And me and Will hit it off immediately. Will's from Long Island, I'm from Queens, so you know it's like peanut butter and jelly. You know, like we got along, and I understood that Will was a little older than me, and you know, like I got like an old work ethic. You know what I mean? Whereas like you kind of just put your head down and shut up and work, and you respect your elders, and then, like I think Will acknowledged that like immediately, like he recognized that, and you know he really, at that time I started Absurd, like my first T-shirt line, and he backed it. And I, you know, like, I had like I was working at Sportswear International as a photo editor and juggling Stussy and going to SVA, like, and I just, like, I needed something to kind of break, you know what I mean? Like, I needed support, and Will recognized that, and he's like, yo, he pulled me to the side one day, he's like, yo, I'm gonna quit in like 3 months. And I met this dude, Issa, he has a boutique in Williamsburg called Issa, and we're gonna start our own sneaker store on Broadway, and he's like, I want you to come manage the store and bring Absurd with you. And I'm like, all right, fuck it, yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I ain't got nothing else better going on. I was like, because shit, like I'm broke. Yeah, so yeah, I needed that opportunity, and that was another kind of like stepping stone education, you know, process for me. You know, like Issa at the time was he was just way ahead, you know what I mean? Like he had a store in Brooklyn that carried Marc Jacobs and Rag & Bone and Rogan, you know what I mean? We're talking 2003, you know what I mean? Like this is not the Williamsburg that has the Apple store and Whole Foods and all the fucking craze that's over there right now, you know what I mean?
And the Supreme now.
And there's a Supreme now, correct. So this, you know, I didn't get it once again. I was wearing Old Navy jeans in 2003. Like I didn't give a fuck. You know, like I had a cool Stussy sweatshirt and a Supreme hat and some fucking like, you know, limited dunks. You know, like the last thing you cared about was, at least for me, was your jeans. I was like, whatever. And then through that, I was taught like, you know, raw denim, Japanese raw denim. You know, whatchamacallit, chain stitching, like all this shit. Like it was cool, man. Like they gave me an opportunity and a platform to really do my thing. Like taught me how to do proper buying for a store, how to merchandise. They allowed me to like contribute ideas for the collection, and like I'll tell you something that was pretty cool. In the building that we were on the corner of Bleecker and Broadway, like adjacent to where Kith Atrium is, right? And so we were sub-level. So this lady used to come down and hang out with us. And one day she was like, you know, I used to take pictures in the 80s. And I was like, yeah, whatever. You know, like everyone always used to come down and tell their story. And she was like, I should show you something. I'm like, yeah. I was like, bring them down. And so she brought down like her book of Polaroids, and it was like Sade, Basquiat, Vincent Gallo, like all these like heavy hitters. I'm like, whoa. I was like, who the fuck are you? And she was like, I'm Mary Pohl. You know, I'm going to put out a book, you know, like it's going to be good. And I was like, oh, no shit is going to be good. So I was like, let us host like your book opening, you know? And I feel like that was a cool turning point, you know, like she lived upstairs in the building, and super sweet, and you know, it's kind of those things like that was, you know, kind of right place, right time. Mm-hmm. So when we launched the Brooklyn store, we turned over Issa to Noam Laguerre, and in that process we launched Mary Pohl's book. So it was a good vibe, you know. And then after that we hosted the Maharishi book, and I did a thing for my friend Todd Jordan. So I was able to like start curating shows and get involved in the art scene. It's cool. Yeah. And
how did you transition from? So it was like you transitioned from Noam Laguerre to Supreme after that?
Correct. I got a random phone call from James. He was like, "Hey, I got some opportunities over here. You know, I might open up a neighborhood store. I also need, you know, support with Supreme. What do you think?" And then, you know, for me, I always compare that to like getting like a phone call from George Steinbrenner.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
Major Leagues.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yo, that's cool what you're doing down there, you know, but like you want to come play on the big show, you know, like come fuck with me, you know. So I was like, shit. I was really flattered. I was like, okay, and nervous. And like that was like literally like 20 interviews to get hired, you know.
Was that because like, you know, you didn't have an idea of what you wanted to do at Supreme, or like was there like not a defined title?
There wasn't a defined title, you know, and I didn't really have a predecessor, you know. Prior to me showing up, there was Aaron Bondaroff, who was kind of like the face spokesperson, like went around hooking people up, you know, like, stable or established, you know, with a title or like someone consistently there, you know, like day in, day out sitting in the office. So yeah, that was kind of like just being able to kind of formulate what it is and that I can do, what it is that I can bring to the table.
And at the time, it was like bringing experience that you learned from like Nom de Guerre with like, you know, curating art shows and then also like pitching ideas for like fashion collections.
It's a accumulation of everything I just told you.
Yeah,
you know, so from
the fader up
until then. You know what I mean? So it's like bringing the photo background to the table, bringing merchandising essentially is styling. You know what I mean? So like I used to have to do the mannequins at Nome or whatever store, like bullshit store I worked at, you know, and by then, like even my style had kind of like progressed, you know, like being able to pull from the past or think what might look good in the future, you know. Yeah, it was a complete 360 of everything I had learned 10 years prior to that, you know, like basically like 18 to 28, like that decade brought me to that point of having the skills to work for Supreme.
Yeah, and I feel like and we talk about this a lot, like we said, it's kind of an educational thing, so we have a lot of people that have like creative director and branding director is sort of like something that they have as a title.
Yeah.
And it's always hard for people to know from the outside what that really entails, but it's kind of like you really do have to bring that jack of all trades.
Yeah, absolutely, and own it, and really execute. I mean, I guess like the big conversation amongst my friends, you know, I'm a little older, I'm 39 now, you know, and it took me, you know, like in my 39th year being my own business owner to be like, yeah, I'm the creative director of Baque Creative, like this shit is mine, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it's a very loosely used term nowadays, you know, in particular with like Instagram, you know, like under everyone's like little like avatars, like creative director, like art director, and it's like mind-blowing, you know what I mean? Like I wish I knew it was that easy. You know, so like give myself a self-appointed title like that, you know, like creative consultant. And it's like, fuck, you know, it's interesting, man, because you see, I feel like it's cyclical, right? Yeah. Because I feel like every 10 years, or I feel like maybe every 5 years in our world, like there's like a new trend, a new fad of like titles and jobs and consultants and yada, yada, yada. And eventually it all goes away. You know what I mean? Like, and if you just let your work speak for itself, like you'll be fine. You know, like I've come to the realization why I don't like doing shit like this is because I also know like like for me it's like, one, I don't want to hear my fucking story again, you know, like I think it gets boring, you know, like because it doesn't get any more exciting, you know, unless we start talking about the future, right? Because the past already has happened, and you know, this is maybe like the 4th time I've done like this interview purposefully, right? Because I know after a while kids are like, I don't want to fucking hear this old dude, you know, because I used to be that kid, you know, but it was never like this where it was recorded and you can listen to over and over again. Like most of the time it was word of mouth. Like you'll sit on the stoop and some old head will start talking about how it was back in the days, and you're just like, you have the option to get up and walk away. Like, I don't want to listen to this old motherfucker anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like,
but then occasionally it's like the Mary Pole comes into the studio.
Yeah, and that's where the humility kicks in, and like you have to have an open mind and you have to listen, because you never know where that message is gonna come from that day. You know what I mean? Like it could be from the fucking UPS worker, it could be from your intern, it could be like from someone that's older. You know what I mean? And I think like that's definitely, if anything, has helped me in my career also, is like just having humility to admit that I don't know it all. Yeah. I don't think I'm like the ultimate cool guy. I don't think like I'm the ultimate like end all be all when it comes to clothing or, you know, photography or magazines or music or art. Like sometimes I just don't know shit. Like talk to me, tell me what you know. And that's why I like talking to kids. You know what I'm saying? I like talking to people that are younger than me, because like I'm genuinely curious. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like most times like when people in my position want to talk to people that are younger, it's because they don't know and they want to capitalize on it.
Yeah, for
you know what I'm saying? They want to exploit it and they want to expose it, and you know, they want to commodify it. You know what I mean? But like for me, it's an exchange, right? Because I have the benefit of living a little bit more than you and having more experience, that I genuinely can help you with what it is that you want. You know what I mean? Whether it's like you want to pursue styling or, you know, art directing, creative directing, you know, designing, photography, you know what I mean? Like
I'm here. You know,
and it sounds like they can also help you in a way because they can
absolutely.
put you on game.
Oh, 100%. You know, so it's like I know what I bring to the table. What do you bring to the table? You know, which is my favorite response to my DMs. You know, kids are like, I fuck with your vision. I fuck what you do. You know, like I want to fucking work with you. And I'm like, and then my response is, well, what do you do? And then usually it's just crickets. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like, I have 400 square feet to make shit happen. You know what I mean? Like this spot is not to like just fucking like dick around all day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to help me, tell me how you can help me. You know what I mean? Like I'm all for it. You know what I mean? And if you're that good, I'll fucking pay you. You know what I'm saying? But like to just say like, you know, because then they're running game on me, right?
Yeah.
Because most of the time like you get gassed on that shit. Like, oh, where you fucking my vision? And then you're like, my vision is so amazing. You know, like at the end of the day, like, that's bullshit, you know what I mean? Because this shit changes every day, you know what I mean? Like what I like, what I think, what I appreciate, what I love, what I hate, you know? Like it's, you know, it's peaks and valleys, you know? So like, it's funny, you know, like I watch some of my peers fall for that shit. I'm like, why do you got this kid hanging around? This kid fucking does nothing, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need yes men or yes women, you know? Like I need doers. I need people that are gonna execute.
I feel like that's another fun part of like the whole, like you were saying, like the social media thing, how like people will be like, I'm a creative director now. And at the same time, they can also reach out to you a lot easier and kind of like try to get that residual clout. You know what I mean? Like they'll reach out and they're just like, "Hey man, I fuck with you," and it's like, "Thanks, man. I don't really know what to do with that statement. It doesn't really like what do you do?" And then like you said, they don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's just because it's so easy for them to reach out to you now. Like in the 90s, they would have had to.
Oh,
run up on you.
You had to like, you got to go through the many kind of like levels, you know, and then like, it's like
19 interviews.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly, trial by fire, and like, you know, either it's sink or swim, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of these kids can't deal with, you know, with just honesty, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you've been told your whole life that you're special, and not saying that you're not, but it's like, you gotta work for that special thing, you know what I'm saying? You're not just born special, you know. I fucking wasn't born special, you know. I still don't think I'm special. I think I'm very fortunate that I've been able to, you know, excel in, you know, in my career. You know, like my mother told me I was gonna be a bum. You know, when I told my mother I was gonna pursue photography, she was like, "You're gonna be a beggar." You know, like, and had I listened to her, you know, I would have just fucking settled for being a school teacher or like some other like blue collar job. You know, my mother came from Ecuador in 1969. You know, couldn't speak English and. You know, it was hard for her, and she became a nurse, you know, so like, I see how she wanted that American dream for me, but this is the new American dream, you know, like being an entrepreneur, you know, like she still doesn't understand what the fuck I do for a living, you know, she knows that I travel a lot, and then, you know, like every once in a while, and she knows that I got food on the table, so she's really happy.
Exactly. She's proud of it.
She's proud of me, but she still doesn't understand what I do for a living, you know, it's kind of amazing.
And so, like, speaking of the entrepreneur stuff, so at what point during the Supreme thing did you kind of start thinking about Baque Creative as your own? Like, when did that idea come about, and how does Awake fit into that?
Well, Awake started 5 years ago. I think I used to work with this company, Ships, in Tokyo, and about that time, they wanted to start kind of like reviving all these New York brands. They were my biggest Japanese client. So they wanted to originally bring back Absurd, and I just thought that was whack. I like that my brand never really blew up. You know, like this is around the time like when like the hundreds became a big deal and 10D, you know, like streetwear was like that first like streetwear bubble was like boom, you know,
graphic tee bubble.
The graphic tee bubble, like the all over print bubble, you know, and I was just like fuck, and I was like one of those dudes that just kept it real and kept it real broke. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm just gonna keep it real Absurd. I'm not gonna do all over prints. Fuck that shit. And so I was like, I don't want to bring that. I like that it was like an aging boxer that just went away, you know, like with like a, let's just say like a 49-in-1 record, you know what I mean? Like
not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like you did good, champ. You know what I mean? And so I was like, no, I won't do that. How about I just create something new for just you guys, you know? Because I also didn't want to get back into the actual like production fashion game. You know what I mean? That shit is a fucking headache. So I created a deal with them where I just designed strictly for Ships. You know, here's the thing too, you know, like I've always kept busy while working at Supreme. You know, like I kept contributing to magazines, I kept taking pictures, you know, like you know, curating art shows, you know, like I knew for me, like being a creative person, that like I couldn't just work, at Supreme. Like, like I love the job, and it definitely consumed a lot of my time. But at the same time, for me to kind of like balance my sanity, I needed to do other things, So like when I was given the opportunity to work with Ships, like, of course I jumped on it to like just have an outlet for just to make fun stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because the truth is, like, if it isn't Supreme or Polo or APC, like, I'm not really wearing it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm stuck in my ways. Like, like every once in a while, like, I'll gravitate towards like a new Japanese brand or something, like really random weird shit, or something I'll find in Paris. But for the most part, a bulk of my fucking clothes are Supreme, APC, and Polo. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make stuff that like I couldn't find within those three kind of like, platforms.
Yeah, the big three.
The big three, for me, my big three, So that's where Awake started. I just, time, that was a big issue, So like, as I grew in career with Supreme, more of my friends would ask me for help, and, occasionally a brand would ask me, to come and do consulting. But the truth is, I couldn't dedicate the right amount of time to justify getting that pay. I'm not big on taking people's money and not doing shit, not earning it. You know what I mean? Like, for me, like, if you're gonna give me a retainer or whatever it is, or you're gonna commission me a budget to produce like a film or, like an interview or whatever it is, like, I wanna give you the best product possible, So it was probably like around the Paris store opening that I realized, like, all right, like, I'm coming on 10 years of working for this brand. I had an amazing run here. And, I think it's time for me to kind of like to start creating my own thing. You know what I mean? Because like, I knew what I wanted my 30s to look like. That was another thing. When I hit 25, I hit like that oh shit, like quarter life crisis. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do with myself? Like, and so I kind of mapped out what 30 and then 30 to 40 would look like. So now I had to start thinking, like, what the fuck does 40 to 50 look like? Yeah. What is, because like, I'm not trying to be like an old dusty streetwear guy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's like a weird age when you're in the streetwear scene too.
Yeah, and for me, and I'm strictly talking for myself. Like like for me, I started seeing what that started looking like for me, and where I didn't want to see myself and where I did want to see myself, and ultimately, it's to kind of like just work on cool and interesting creative projects. You know what I mean? And kind of like owning stuff that's mine. Like, I can never claim any type of like ownership of Supreme or any of the projects, because ultimately all those things they're all like a group process. You know what I'm saying? I can say I contribute, I've definitely contributed to the brand over 10 years, you know what I mean? But I don't own anything. Whereas like here now, Awake is mine, Baque Creative is mine, and then the next project that I'm working on for Art Basel is mine, that I'm able to kind of bring all my friends together too.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
I think we were talking about this on the walk over about like the contributions thing, because like when the Paris store opened, like in that collection there was like the Sade T-shirt, and you literally were like, that's my love letter basically, like before you dipped. Yeah. Was that basically sort of like the idea? Like, it's kind of like there is like a contribution like that?
No, I think that's just osmosis, man. Like, I've been fucking playing Sade and wearing Sade T-shirts for the last 10 years, and in the office, and that's something that I constantly was trying to like pitch, and ultimately, like, it's cool that it got done. Even that, I can't take ownership for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't lay out the T-shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me being there. You know, the same thing Morrissey. Like, I can't claim ownership of that. But have I been listening to Morrissey for the last 10 years? Like, in that office and wearing Morrissey T-shirts. Like. Like, I think we all get inspired from one another. I took a huge inspiration from Supreme. You know what I mean? For me to say that Supreme doesn't influence Awake, I'd be lying. You know what I mean? Like, it goes both ways.
Yeah, so speaking of Awake, you mentioned like, a project that you're doing at Art Basel. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so recently I did the programming for the Virgil 10 space with Nike here on Wall Street. And why Nike came to me was they wanted to do something that was a little more in-depth and substantial than just doing a pop-up where kids show up and it's like, all right, come buy this shit and I'll get the fuck out. Like, it's like, come and chill. You know what I mean? So came up with the concept to like have these conversations based around like Virgil's creative process and like bring in these people where it's like these weird juxtapositions of inspirations of his. So like you can bring like a Venus X or a Spike Lee or a Laylee or Don C, Eric Costin, Benji B, you know what I mean? And none of it sounds off because ultimately it's like, it's the 1 degree of separation of Virgil, you know what I mean? Because he's the adhesive to all that stuff, right? And then doing these workshops with kids where they could come in and do, it's in a way it's like a masterclass workshop where like if you're a kid you could come and make like a weird Air Force One with like Shane and Ian from Hood by Air, you know? And then I brought in Callie and Brendan from Somewhere and Election Reform to also do one based around t-shirts, and Heron Preston came in and did one about zines, you know? So the reason I mentioned that is, you know, the real magic during those 3 days happened in the workshops, you know? So like you would have like Ferg hanging out in one corner and Yachty in another corner, then you had like some random kid from the Bronx like working on a fucking t-shirt, and Virgil's hanging out, and like no one was Instagramming, no one was doing social media. Like all the kids, they were busy working and having conversations. You know what I mean? Like kids were like legitimately like running up on me and being like, "What was it like working for Supreme? What are you doing now?" And it's like, cool. Like I have no issue like talking to anyone at any given time. You know what I mean? Like, and that was kind of like across the board. Like, you know, Tremaine from No Vacancy was there talking to kids. So kind of taking that momentum and that energy, and I wanted to do something for Basel, and I befriended Craig Robbins, who runs the Miami Design District. I befriended him earlier in the year, and he was just like, hey, this platform is here for whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, you know, which is kind of amazing. And I wanted to do, you know, pretty much take that kind of like workshop mentality, you know, tangibility, interaction with kids, and bring in the same kind of heads, which is like at this point like is like home team, you know. So we're gonna do like a 3-day. I want to say it's more like a museum gift shop, you know. Like I want the feeling like if you go to like the Baldessari show or like the Basquiat show, and when you get to the very end, you get to walk away with like the one cool like tea or mug or like
tote bag
or something like that says that you went to the exhibition. So I'm calling this social studies. And I want, you know, everyone ultimately will make their one like off social studies project or product. And Virgil's doing it, Tremaine from No Vacancy, Adwala, Somewhere, Callie is gonna do a limited print and making it affordable for kids, you know what I mean? Let's see, Union Los Angeles, O32C, Awake. I'm also gonna start a press division for the agency. So I'm gonna print my friend's book. Her name is Shaniqua Jarvis, the photographer. So we're gonna do a launch for that. Then we're gonna do workshops with Virgil, workshops with Tremaine and A-Side, via Art Dad, through Converse, Nike's getting down. Excuse me. We'll do the conversations. I mean, nothing's locked in, but I would love to get like Uncle Luke to talk about like Miami Booty Base with Virgil and Tremaine. Yeah, that's the project. And do like an Art Mom Day too. Art Moms would be like Shaniqua and the Adwala girls. Do something. I don't know. It's like still in the works. But
sounds
like
exciting.
Everyone's like, that's the shit that like gets me like hyped. You know what I mean? Like to be able, like that's the whole point of Baque Creative, is to have this platform, you know, like for people to kind of like excel and move on. You know what I mean? Like my job isn't to like, all right, come under me and I just want you guys under this umbrella. It's like, nah, like I want everyone to elevate. Like this whole thing is about elevation. Together as one, you know what I mean? Like the kids that come here and that work for me too. Like I don't want them to work for me for like the next 3 to 4 years and that's it. Like I want you to like gain a skill and then go be the director of whatever it is at company X. You know what I mean? Like, cause for me, like that's the biggest reward that I can get. It's like that kid would have never gotten there if it wasn't for me. Right. Like other people don't work that way. Other people are like, no, like you're talented and you stay with me forever. And you know, like, it's like, nah, man, like there'll be other people, you know what I mean? Like, and I, you know, like for me, like it's really important also for like kids of color to have like a place to work. You know what I mean? Like I want, you know, like me growing up, no one told me, or no one that looked like me told me that I could be a photographer, that I could be a stylist, that I can be a creative director, an art director, or a clothing company owner. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one ever told me that. It's sure as hell no one that looked like me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's, for me, that's why, like, I'm very diligent when answering my DMs. You know what I mean? Across the board, you know, black, white, yellow, green, purple, whatever. You know what I mean? But I think, for me, that's what's really important about this tangibility and, like, having a platform, say, like, IG. You know what I mean? Where it's, like, some kid will literally hit me up from, like, Chicago, and he's like, I'm Mexican, I don't know what to do, blah, 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 blah. You know, like my parents don't get me, and I'm just like, cool, I'll take the 5 minutes out of my day to answer him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a way that we usually interrupt our podcast episodes is with, like, you know, a bit of information or jewels that people can use to apply to, like, you know, their career path as well. You mentioned, like, you know, when you were coming up that you didn't have someone tell you that you can be all of those things. What would be something that you would give as, like, you know, a gem to Angelo back then when you first started?
Save your money. Yeah, just save your money, you know, like you're gonna need it. And then, I mean, it's not really for me back then, but I think because I had it. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't have been able to make it this far. You know, for me, like what's most important to tell kids that are hustling and grinding right now is to continue and to just work with, like, to get here, it's hard work. It's not just like, it's not a quick flip, and it doesn't happen in, you know, a week or 30 days, and it might not happen in a year. You know what I mean? Like for me, like this, it took me 20 years to get to this point, and the whole point of me being here is absolutely to show you how to do it, and it should take you half the time. You know what I mean? And not saying that everyone has to put in 10 years. From other people, it might happen faster. There's definitely kids out there that are probably much more talented than I am, and it might take them 5 years, but ultimately at the core of it is hard work. It's hard work, you know what I mean? Like you could definitely charm your way through the front door, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you earn your seat at the table. You know, like to earn your seat at the table, it takes a lot of fucking hard work.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect ending point. Thanks so much for your time, man. Thank you for bringing us in here. Thank you for talking about everything.
Yeah,
Thank you
you guys.
dropping a couple gems.
Yeah.
Awesome.